So, Mr. Ambassador, we are talking at a time when Prime Minister Netanyahu, regarding the situation during the weekend, the attacks during the weekend, he talked about a harsh response when it comes to Lebanon, a harsh response of Israel on Lebanon following the attacks. How do you assess this and what does it mean?
Well, we'll have to wait and see what the exact response will be. It was approved by the Israeli cabinet, but it's very important for the audience to understand the larger context. On the 8th of October, in a completely unprovoked way, Hezbollah started to attack the Israeli north with hundreds of missiles, drones, rockets, and heavily damaging our border area to the extent that we had to evacuate about 80,000 people from the border area. And it is very important to understand that 80,000 people will not go back to the border area if they don't feel secure, which means that the Radwan forces, about 15,000 Hezbollah terrorists that have been threatening the border towns, will have to leave the area, because nobody will agree after the 7th of October and the attack of Hamas and the burning of families and killing, mass murdering. They won't agree to go back to these places when we have such threat. So the government has been very clear. Either we achieve a negotiated solution by which the Radwan forces and Hezbollah terrorists go north to the Litani, like the UN Security Council has approved in Resolution 1701, or Israel will have to take measures by itself. Now, whether we're going to take the measures now or a later stage, I don't know. But this is completely unacceptable, because there's no reason in the world why Israel would have to continue suffering this terrorist threat.
You're talking about negotiations. Is there still place for negotiations, because Israel is in a very hot situation? I'm talking about the war with Hamas and now with Hezbollah. Is there still a place for negotiations?
Well, that's a good question.
Asking you as a diplomat.
That's a good question. You know, war is a continuation of diplomacy in other means. When diplomacy fails, you have to take measures. We continue to hope. Look, we are a democratic country. We have a conscription army. Nobody in Israel is enthusiastic to attack Lebanon. And we've been very clear from now, and very restrained, by the way, so far, when it comes to retaliating or defending ourselves from this threat. But enough is enough. At some point, we'll have to take measures. And at the end of the day, negotiations will have to take place, because we want to be in a situation that we can negotiate peace with Lebanon. But this can only come when the Lebanese people decide that they don't want to attack Israel anymore. This is not the situation right now.
And now going to the conflict with Hamas, there's always the question everybody's asking, so after the Israeli forces leave Gaza, what will happen to Gaza? Will Gaza be part of the Palestinian territories? Will it not be part of the Palestinian territories? How will it be handled? Maybe it's early, but...
So, if you remember, the Israeli government has adopted a very clear policy to completely eradicate the military capabilities of Hamas. That mission is almost achieved. There are still Hamas operatives going around, but they are not working in an organized way. We are continuing to chase them. We have killed about 15,000 Hamas terrorists and wounded many more. And we want to bring our hostages back. And that is also half achieved, because we brought back more than half, but still we have 116 hostages. So we have to finish that job. It can be implemented by a combination of military means and diplomacy. We have a resolution that was approved by the UN Security Council and supported by the United States and by Israel, with a very clear path to achieve that goal. So we have to be in a situation that Hamas doesn't regroup and doesn't rearm itself to attack Israel again like the 7th of October. Now, we have already declared that we don't want to rule the Gaza Strip forever. We will stay militarily in Gaza as long as this threat continues to exist. If we achieve a situation in which there is a force that commits to refrain from attacking Israel, well, in that case, Israel will withdraw. So this is not going to be easy to achieve because no force in the world is willing at this point to fight Hamas. So nobody is going to fight Hamas for us. We have to do the job, and if Hamas refuses, we'll have to continue being there in order to fight them.
And when it comes to Gaza, there's always the media discourse and there are media reports about civilian victims, civilian Palestinian victims. How do you assess this? Because in terms of discourse, I think there is a fight regarding the idea of victimhood. Israelis are victims, but also Palestinians are victims. So how do you assess this?
Well, first of all, any loss of civilian life is a tragedy. A tragedy that could easily be avoided if Hamas wouldn't have attacked Israel. Now, people have to understand what these terrorists want to achieve is to completely abuse the set of rules that the civilized world has created in order to create a victory. So they have turned, now hospitals should be impugned. They've used hospitals to attack Israel. Ambulances should be impugned. They use ambulances to transfer terrorists. Schools should be impugned, so they concentrate their headquarters in schools. The UN should be a neutral body, so they concentrate the headquarters. The intelligence headquarters of Hamas was under the UNRWA main headquarters in Gaza. So we have to understand what we are tackling here. Now, Israel will continue to act according to international law. But if Hamas uses civilians as human shields and breaks any rule written in the book, then unfortunately, civilians are going to suffer. And this is not something that we want to happen, but this is something that Hamas wants to happen because they abused their own casualties in order to create that facade, that victimhood, to create pressure on Israel to stop the campaign. Now, we are not going to stop the campaign because we know what will happen if we stop. Hamas will attack us again and again and again. So it's not that we have to free ourselves from Hamas. The Palestinians need to be freed from Hamas if they want to have any kind of future, because their future is completely hijacked by extremist terrorists that want to change the nature of the Middle East. It's not just about the Palestinian issue. It's an axis of evil that is supported by Iran, that is trying to get hegemony in the region with their extremist agenda, and then, of course, impose that hegemony and push it also in the civilized world, in Europe, in the United States, and we are seeing that. We are seeing the extremist demonstrators with Hamas flags in Europe, in the United States. That's very clear where they're going. So Israel actually is the stumbling block that is stopping all this wave of extremism to invading the civilized world. And instead of looking at Israel, that is performing actually amazingly well when it comes to the ratio between terrorists and civilians, okay, when it comes to casualties, instead of that, we should concentrate in putting pressure on the extremists.
But on the other hand, the ICC actually released a warrant against Prime Minister Netanyahu for war crimes, which is available in most of the European countries. How do you assess that?
Well, first of all, the ICC, the prosecutor of the ICC, has requested arrest warrants, and we have to see it, whether the judges are going to approve it or not. We think it's preposterous. Because if you tie the hands of Israel, that is acting according to international law, how is the world going to defend themselves from terrorists? Israel has a huge number, hundreds of lawyers actually, that are working within the IDF that are approving each and every target that Israel is targeting in the Gaza Strip. We are acting completely according to international law. And the problem is that many times international institutions, journalists, and also judges in the ICC rely on false information and biased information that is being sent or is being published. You are seeing huge efforts by Al Jazeera of Qatar, TRT, and other biased journalist institutions portraying a completely distorted picture of what's going on. So this, when you create a situation in which these bodies, the ICC or the ICJ, that were created in order to defend the civilized world, if they are going to be destroyed by this political agenda, then they are going to be destroyed for everybody. It's not going to be for Israel is not going to be the only victim here. What is at stake here is our freedom, our capability to defend ourselves from terrorists. And if Israel is being held to an impossible standard, that will implicate on everybody else.
So you're saying there are no war crimes in Gaza?
Of course not. The war criminals are Hamas, that are committing double war crimes. They are hiding behind civilians, they are firing from within civilian areas, and they are abusing any norm that we have created in the last hundreds of years in order to actually get a victory. So they are attacking our immune system. We have to understand that. All the things that we believe in, freedom of speech, liberalism, civil society, civil institutions, all of that, the norms of conflict, all of that is being attacked directly by Hamas and by Iran. So in this way, they are trying to defeat not only Israel, they're trying to defeat the civilized world.
We're talking about biased media. Why are no international journalists in Gaza?
Well, first of all, that's not correct. There are.
Well, yes, there are, but there are people who actually live there. I mean, they're not correspondents.
No, I'm talking that Israel has allowed some foreign journalists to enter embedded into Israeli forces. Can you imagine that you would have in Iraq, for example, situation that Western journalists would be among ISIS, what would happen to them, and what would happen to American forces that are trying to fight against ISIS? So it's completely unreasonable from a humanitarian point of view that you would have international journalists that will, again, be abused by Hamas, has human shields. So it's very difficult to understand and to grasp that, because when somebody attacks your character, when somebody attacks all the things that you believed in and abuses them in such an efficient way, it's very difficult to be aware of what's going on. But this is exactly what's going on. And those who are being dragged by Hamas to believe in what they're saying are actually being abused as well. And we have to be very careful of that, because at the end of the day, if Israel is not allowed to defend itself, nobody else will be allowed to defend themselves in the future, and they will use the same methods they are using now against others.
You had a reception at the end of your mandate. You had a reception at the Palace of the Parliament. And during the reception, you talked about the discreet way in which Romania helped Israel in the release of certain hostages, like Israeli hostages from Gaza. Because you're a diplomat, I know you cannot talk about it openly, but what were you talking about? I mean, could you elaborate on that? Could you talk about the way you collaborated with Romania?
Well, what I've said is that we've been having excellent cooperation with the Romanian government in the efforts to release the hostages. I didn't refer to the one hostage or the other hostage. Yeah. We are talking about a general effort that has to do with many issues, whether it be intelligence exchanges, whether it be for example, getting people out of harm's way, when it comes to Romanian citizens or Israeli citizens, making an effort, a diplomatic effort, vis-a-vis the stakeholders. So Romania also has been very active with the different stakeholders. At the end of the day, this is a collective effort. Okay, Romania supports the UN Security Council that was adopted and is part of the international effort to try to bring peace to the region. We appreciate that, and we will continue to cooperate in order to release all the hostages, because we will have to continue this effort until all the hostages are released.
What's the situation now with the hostages? I mean, well, in terms of the way the public opinion is grasping on this, because it's almost a year since things happened. So do they still have
300 days
hope?
have passed, and
Yes.
Of course that everybody in Israel is eager to see the hostages released.
Is there still hope?
Of course, there is hope, and we know that there is hope, because when we applied military pressure in the past, we have brought hostages to be released. We have also released some hostages in military operations, not most of them, but about 27 of them. So, of course, there is hope, and it's a continued effort. The public opinion, on the one hand, puts pressure on the government to do a deal as soon as possible, but on the other hand, the majority of Israelis also wants the government to pursue the goal of eradicating the military capabilities of Hamas, and nobody wants to see a surrender to the Hamas terrorist demands. So we have to balance between the two. It's a very difficult dilemma that, of course, we have to grapple with, and that Hamas, in a very malevolent way, has created for us. But this is the challenge, and we'll have to continue dealing with it until we solve it.
There is hope, but is there anger as well when it comes to the public opinion?
Of course there is anger. There is anger because we have failed on the 7th of October, both on the intelligence side and also on the operational side, because the basic contract between civilians and their security forces and the government has been breached by this terrible massacre of civilians, of rape, of mutilation, of burning, and the people are angry. Of course they're angry, and they demand accountability from the people that are in charge. So now we are concentrated in a war effort, and we have to sort the problems out. Once we finish this war, there will be time, of course, for investigation and for also personal consequences for those who are responsible for this. So any democratic society has to be able to hold decision makers accountable, and Israel has been doing that in the past, and it will do it in the future.
How does the Gaza conflict influence the way in which Israel sees its relationship with the West Bank?
Well, yes, of course. There has been, first of all, a concern that what happened on the 7th of October might repeat itself in Judea and Samaria, in the West Bank. Number one. Number two, the residents of the West Bank, of the Palestinian Authority, they became very supportive of the Hamas attack against Israel. And Hamas, unfortunately, according to the polls that have been released, is very popular amongst the Palestinian situation. And that makes you wonder, what prospect do we have for peace in a situation that Palestinians have genocidal intentions against Israel? So we in the past, we had different attempts to propose peace, to propose a state for the Palestinians, but I doubt very much that in this situation we will be willing, Israel will be willing to withdraw from Palestinian cities and have a risk.
The West Bank, yeah.
Yes, have a risk that we will be attacked again. And in the parliament, we had a resolution that was approved by more than 80 members against the Palestinian state, at least at this stage, because we don't want a Palestinian terror state controlled by Hamas.
So at this point, there is no support for a Palestinian state, because there's this discourse in the media that maybe the existence of a Palestinian state would,
Well, I will be glad
ease
to.
things.
I will be glad to hear about the reasonable path in which the Palestinians can rule themselves without threatening Israel. Unfortunately, this is not the situation right now. What we need is an international effort to de-radicalize the Palestinian Authority, to de-radicalize the Palestinian population. Yes. And if that is not done, I don't see how a two-state solution can happen. We have to be realistic. If the forces of extremism in the Middle East are not defeated, they're not interested in a two-state solution. They're interested in destroying Israel in the way to destroy the US and the Western civilization. This is what they want. So we have to be realistic. We cannot fantasize about a situation that is not achievable in a setup that is all are completely against it. So Israel will continue to be realistic. Okay, we will continue to seek a realistic path to peace, provided that we have a partner in the other side that doesn't want to destroy us. You know, we have taken risks in the past. 30 years ago, we allowed 45,000
that would be my next question.
PLO militants to come into the Gaza Strip and the West Bank in order to create the Palestinian Authority. In 2005, we completely withdrew from the Gaza Strip to give a chance to Palestinians to rule themselves. So, you know, this is not going to happen unless the Palestinians don't want it and unless the extremist forces in the Middle East are not being tackled.
Because, yeah, that was my next question, because given the tensions between Israel and Lebanon, and given the fact that now there's a full-fledged war in Gaza, actually made me remember, in a way, made me think of the situation in the 60s and the 70s with Israel. What did Israeli diplomats learn from those conflicts? How is this conflict different? And is there still a way to peace? Because it's easy to talk about peace when you're in the Western world and you don't know war. But is there still a way to peace? And how do you get the lessons from the 60s and the 70s?
If you remember when the peace process started in the mid-70s with Egypt, you had a situation in which the leader of the Arab world at that time, Anwar Sadat, made a courageous decision to make peace with Israel. Okay? And that was supported by the United States. And even though the Soviet Union didn't approve of it, it succeeded. Because the leadership, the most powerful country in the Middle East at that time, has taken a bold decision for peace. What we are having right now in the Middle East is that you have an extremist Islamist regime called Iran that is actually, especially following the Arab Spring in 2010, has created a monster with tentacles in each and every country in the region. In Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, they are terrorizing the other Arab Sunni countries, and they are proliferating weapons of mass destruction. They have zero intention of making peace in the region. Okay? So when you have such a situation in which Iran is becoming a hegemonic power, who is going to broker peace?
And now, going to your mandate in Romania. Actually, the first time we talked, it was at the beginning of your mandate, and you were talking about the Abraham Accords. Are they still available now? Because you just talked about the tensions with...
Well, actually, I don't know if you have noticed, but none of the Arab countries that have signed with us the Abraham Accords have withdrawn from the Abraham Accords. On the contrary, what we had only 2 or 3 months ago, when the Iranians launched this barrage of more than 200 missiles and drones and ballistic missiles towards Israel, you had a joint operation of the Israeli, American, British, French, Jordanian, Saudi air forces that actually stopped that barrage of missiles coming. So as much as Iran is getting stronger in the region and proliferating more weapons and creating more threats, there is a more acute interest of Israel and some of the Sunni Arab countries to cooperate together in order to face that threat. And we hope that also in the West, people will show resolution against this threat. Because if the West is going to continue trying to contain Iran and also only deal with dialogue with Iran, and is not going to, put pressure, then this conflict is going to expand. And we are seeing that very clearly in the way that Iran is supporting Russia in its aggression against Ukraine. So we've been talking about this for years, that the Iranian missiles and drones are threatening Europe. Nobody believed us. They thought, no, this is something that belongs to the Middle East. But now you are having these drones being fired on Europe. So this has to be faced with something. So yes, there is some action that the Americans and the Brits are taking, for example, vis-à-vis the Houthis in Yemen, but it has to be much stronger if we want to be a result, if we want to see a result, because extremists won't be deterred with words. We have to have actions, military actions, diplomatic actions. Only last week, Germany has put on the table of the European Union a resolution, a draft resolution to designate the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization. Europe has to unite in order to designate the IRGC, because they are responsible for terrorism all over the world, for proliferation of all these destructive weapons that are hitting Europe. So we have to be resolute diplomatically, militarily, and of course we have to be very cautious when it comes to the implementation of our freedoms, because, as I said before, just like Hamas is exploiting our norms, others are doing that on European soil when it comes to channels that incite for extremism that are being freely shown. Europe has taken action against broadcast of Russian channels, right? So why shouldn't Europe take action to block extremist content that is coming from the Middle East? This is an imminent threat. We are seeing these extremists on the streets of Paris, of Berlin, of London, everywhere.
During your mandate, there was an agreement between Israel and the political party AUR, which was seen as pretty controversial. Is it still available? Because you were talking about the fact that you believe in what the people from AUR told you that...
Well, we were very clear regarding 4 principles that are important for us when it comes to combating anti-Semitism. That any political party that wants to have a dialogue with us has to commit to, first of all, combating...
The naming of...
First of all, assuming responsibility on the Holocaust that was committed against the Jewish people in the areas that were controlled by Romania.
Yes.
To condemn anti-Semitism and to adopt the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, to prohibit the eulogization of war criminals, okay, and to commit to education, Holocaust education of the younger generation. This party has committed to that.
So you followed up
Since
on
then,
it, and it's...
we've been, of course, monitoring the situation. It wasn't a carte blanche. We've been monitoring the situation. We haven't seen major incidents of them, breaking this commitment. So I think this is a consistent policy that we are implementing, all over Europe, and there are no exceptions for that.
And when it comes to the bilateral economic relationship, there's the relationship regarding the military cooperation. And I was asking you the first time we talked at the beginning of your mandate about the possibility of G2G contracts when it comes to acquisitions of military equipment by Romania from Israel. How are things going on that side?
This is up to the Romanian government to decide in what model they want to use in order to procure what Romania needs. I haven't seen, up to this point, a G2G scheme being devised, but what we have seen is a series of international tenders that the Romanian army has published, and actually there are Israeli companies that have filed a request to apply to these tenders with the hope that we will win some of them. We have very good proposals that, and we can compete very well. And we have one advantage that no other country has. Not only that we have everything that we supply is combat proven, but we are ready to produce jointly here in Romania.
As invest in the national
invest here in Romania.
industry.
And this is an added value that no other country is proposing. So if, for example, we will win the tender to supply short and medium range anti-missile batteries, we will be able to construct them in Romania. Nobody else is offering that. If we win the tender to supply satellites to Romania, we will build them, or at least partially build them here. Nobody else is proposing that. And this has a promise for the future, because Romania has the capability, from the engineering point of view, have great engineers here, to restore the industries that you had here in the past, and that you're capable, that not only to make them exist for yourself, but actually to make them a hub for the region. The Israeli companies have an interest to work here and to establish here factories, not because they want to do a favor to anybody. It's a common interest.
It's
if
business.
we have factories jointly with the Romanians here on European soil, we will be able to continue selling to NATO after NATO finishes its program to build up their capabilities and starts leaning much less on purchases from outside NATO. So we are now a very important partner of Europe when it comes to supply of defense systems. Okay, even from those countries that are criticizing us, they're continuing to, buy our systems. But we want to be partners for the long term, and this is an excellent way of creating that partnership for the future. So I'm leaving here after me a heritage of efforts of doing that. We had in the last year visits of very senior officials from the Israeli military industries. The head of IAI was here, the heads of Rafael, of the Israeli shipyards. They met with the Minister of Defense and with other officials from the government. We are going to do our best to create the right partnerships that fit the Israeli interest and the Romanian interest.
Also, a big field of collaboration is the one about agriculture and farming.
Yes.
How are things on that front?
Well, all of the big Israeli agriculture firms are continuing to work here. They did many turnkey projects when it comes to irrigation and other harvesting and post-harvesting technologies. In Romania, you have many big farms and medium-sized farms that are purchasing these technologies, and actually this business has been globalized already, because multinational companies have purchased Israeli today. Actually, for example, Netafim is being owned by Rivalis from the United States, and you have Nandan Jain that is owned actually by an Indian company. So it's Israelis that are still working, but it's an international effort. And in addition to that, we have started a very interesting project in cooperation with the mayor of Buzău, Constantin Toma, to do a pilot on irrigation with purified water. This is a very early stage in which many parts of Europe that are dry of water are going to have to deal with, because the availability of fresh water will diminish, and the funding for projects with fresh water is diminishing as well. Mm-hmm. And in Israel, we have created a situation in which we irrigate 70% of our crops with purified water. This requires...
Like salt water that is desalinized? Or
No. That is, it's sewage water that is being purified.
Okay.
So this is a technology that actually allows, you have, in every big city, you have huge quantities of sewage that you have to purify, because you don't want to contaminate the rivers, for example. So the question is, to what stage you purify the water, and for which crop. So we have different kinds of degrees of purification that fits different crops. For example, you have non-edible crops. They're like cotton. There you don't have to purify a lot. Then you have horticulture. You have to purify more. And then you have vegetables like tomatoes and cucumbers that you have to purify to the maximum. So in Israel, we have a system of regulation that includes the Ministry of Health, of Environment, of Agriculture, that are working with the farmers to implement this in order for us to continue having agriculture. This, I believe, in the coming decade and 2 decades, is going to become very relevant for Southern Europe as well. The European Union is very interested in financing these projects, and we hosted last year a delegation of 18 members of an interministerial delegation from different ministries in Romania to come and see how it works in Israel. So although the seeds are being planted now, we are going to see the fruits of that effort in the coming years.
Well, at the beginning of your mandate, did you have a particular list of projects? And I wanted to ask you, what are the projects that were left behind, the projects that you didn't accomplish, actually?
Yeah. So, look, there are several beginnings. One project that I have devised in the high-tech sector is something called a scale-up program. You know, I saw that in Romania there is a challenge for startups to become unicorns.
Yes.
You know? And in Israel we were pretty successful in that. And I brought here a company that knows how to do that. They have actually partnered with Raiffeisen Bank and with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. We were hoping to start a program in Israel, to launch a program in July. Unfortunately, because of the war, we couldn't do that. So they are going to launch it by the end of the year and do the first session of that effort in Milan, in Italy. So this is going to happen only after I leave, but it's a result of the efforts we have put together with other partners. There is an effort when it comes to tourism. We finally have convinced the tour operators organization here in Romania to invite tour operators from Israel. They are going to come here hopefully in October after I leave, and the hope is that they will do contracts with Romanian companies to increase the marketing of packages in Israel for Israelis to come and visit Romania. And that is also something that's hopefully going to bear fruit after I leave. So there are many things that, you know, we have invested in a heritage project. We think that it is very important that the young generations of descendants of Romanian Jews that live in Israel will reconnect with the Romanian country, with the country of their ancestors. Many of them are very curious to see where their great-grandparents and grandparents came from. This is not only the situation in Israel, it can happen also with, you know, many American Jews that came from Romania. So we are working together with the University of Bucharest and with the Jewish Federation to try to create a project, and we actually started implementation this year of the first internet platform that is dealing with heritage. So yes, there are many things that we are leaving behind.
What about the Holocaust Memorial, which is a long, ongoing project?
Yeah.
It has a place, but did things happen there?
Yeah. Actually,
as you know?
the money for the museum was allocated. As you know, the Elie Wiesel Institute is in charge of that. We have managed to create some small breakthrough when I was here, because there was a kind of tension between the planners of the museum and the municipality of Bucharest. The municipality, you know, has a very clear policy when it comes to maintenance of architectural buildings, of buildings that have architectural value. So they were reluctant from approving the plan that was devised by the planning company that won the tender to build the museum. And thanks to the efforts we have put together with other ambassadors and with the Prime Minister's office, finally the municipality of Bucharest and the Elie Wiesel Institute, together with the planners, have reached a compromise. And now the Elie Wiesel Institute is redrawing the plans and will submit it to the municipality, I hope, in the coming weeks. And then the municipality is going to issue the permit that will allow the museum to start to being built. The money that was allocated for the museum has to be used by the end of 26. So we hope that things will go smoothly, and we will see a museum. Look, it will be a huge asset for Romania, because for the first time, Romanians will have a chance to look at the huge heritage that Jews have left behind in this country for hundreds of years. And of course, it will be an opportunity also to educate about the horrors of the Holocaust and how to repeat such an atrocity from happening in the future.
At the goodbye reception, you were talking about the fact that you did not want to leave Romania, actually, and that your wife actually told you, well, then don't go. What would have made you stay? Actually.
Well, it's a good question. Look, that's the dynamic of diplomatic careers. You always look for the next opportunity, and nothing is permanent. It's only a temporary mission. Here, unfortunately, it was only 2 years because this opportunity presented itself in an
You're going to
way.
India, yes.
But we really enjoyed Romania. We enjoy everything in Romania: the nature, the people, the culture, and we've visited so many places here, from the Danube Delta to Bucovina to Maramureș to the Iron Gates, Timișoara, all Transylvania, the Făgăraș Mountains. It's so beautiful, and we enjoy the great exchanges that we have in culture between Israel and Romania. You cannot imagine the number of cultural exchanges we have every year. It's dozens and dozens of exchanges, not just the events that we organize at the embassy, but also events that are being organized just by people that are connected together, whether it be the Israeli participation in the Sibiu International Theatre Festival, or in the film festival in Cluj, or in the Eminescu festival, Georgianescu festival, or jazz festivals, electronic music festivals, books that are being translated by editorials here in Romania that are interested in Israeli literature. This is really amazing. It shows the deepness and the richness of this unique relation that we have between Israel and Romania, and it was really a true pleasure for me to be part of this.
You understand Romanian, don't you? I mean, you learned Romanian.
Am învățat românește din un an înainte de a veni în România și a fost foarte important pentru mine. Ai înțeles, pentru că românește este ușa pentru cultura și civilizația. A fost foarte importantă pentru mine. Din această cauză am învățat.
Ce a fost cel mai greu la învățatul limbii române?
A fost greu pentru că limba romană este o limbă latină, dar am influența de otomană și de Rusia.
Da.
Și pentru mine, eu vorbesc spaniol.
Deci a fost ușor.
A fost mai ușor, dar partea latină a fost mai ușor.
Dar ce o să vă lipsească din România? Ultima întrebare. Ce o să vă lipsească din România? Un lucru, experiență.
Look, I love opera.
What will you miss?
The Romanian opera is amazing, and I enjoyed going to the opera and having great relations with Daniel Ginga, the manager of the opera. So we will miss the Romanian opera for sure, both my wife and myself.
What was your favorite show? And this is the last question.
We went maybe to 15 of them. The Marriage of Figaro was, I like it very much. But it's the interpretation. The interpretation of the Romanian opera is very classical. It's not necessarily. In Israel, usually interpretations are sort of postmodern, and I don't like it very much. Here you have a beautiful building, a neoclassical building, Belle Époque, and you have a great staff and great interpretations, and we like it very much.